Pavel's able to use his removal to clear off the Imp Gang boss thanks to the extra body.
Well, he's going to evaluate his draw, but Pavel is running out of time, so he doesn't have much time to think. He's probably already thought the return. Flame Strike may not be a good pickup now, but that's one of those cards that can help you swing a board later on in the match.
And the cost reduction from Sorcerer's Apprentice allows Pavel to use Ice Lance just to buy time. This isn't going to damage the Imp Gang boss, it's not frozen, but it does protect both of his minions here. But Dr. Hippie has a pretty big moment of his own. Doomguard with a silver... Oh, and it does! The Silverware Golem does come down. He discards it, goes directly into play. A massive tempo swing for Dr. Hippie. He gets both the 5/7 charge and the 3/3 on the board right away.
And he holds on to the Crazed Alchemist. I'm actually not sure which one's better in that situation, to discard Crazed or the Voidwalker, because Voidwalker can do wonders in sort of protecting a more powerful minion from the face of other minions on the opposing side of the board.
I think that Cursed Alchemist is going to work out really well right here, though. It'll allow Dr. Hippie to swap his Imp Gang boss to kill that Azure Drake, allowing him to keep his Doomguard in play. So this could be a pretty powerful swing from Dr. Hippie. Oh, or there's the Soulfire.
Yeah, now he can use his minions to push damage. He can still Crazed Alchemist his Imp Gang boss if he wants to push.
One really interesting thing is he has the Crazed Alchemist plus the Abusive Sergeant interaction here. Because the Crazed Alchemist effect is permanent, it will flip and retain the attack you give with the Abusive Sergeant as health. So you can potentially Abusive Sergeant his Doomguard, then Crazed Alchemist it, so you can attack for 7, then flip it to be a 4/7 if he wants.
And those would be permanent stats because of the interaction, something we saw with Direwolf Alpha earlier on in the tournament as well.
And this allows Dr. Hippie to not only clear off all of Pavel's board incredibly efficiently, but have a super strong Doomguard left over. That Doomguard was damaged, and it was potentially in range of, say, Flame Strike, which Pavel does in his hand, which could he cast next turn. So a huge interaction for Dr. Hippie there.
Yeah, definitely, and it was at that 4 health, like you mentioned, for Flame Strike. Pavel, though, does have some pretty decent cards in his hand. Water Elemental's very resilient on the board. Flame Waker plus Arcane Intellect can draw you a lot of those cheap spells that can allow you to push back on the board. Pavel, though, looks like he's just setting up for the Flame Strike here.
Yeah, he does have the ability to clear off Dr. Hippie's board next turn, and Hippie, drawing a couple of fairly low-impact cards here, he is in kind of an awkward spot. He does know that it at least looks like Pavel is setting up for Flame Strike. He, of course, knows that there's a Flame Strike in Pavel's deck, so he's probably trying to figure out exactly what he can do to maneuver around this, or if he doesn't feel like he can afford to play around it at all and just wants to deploy his hand.
Indeed, yeah. So Dr. Hippie, he has to realize that that Flame Strike is definitely a huge possibility. That Frostbolt on the Doomguard is not a play you make very often. It could block that 5 damage. It could act, or start at the 4 damage now that it's been flipped. And it could act as sort of a heal, but you sort of know what's coming in the back of your head, and this is going to be a big swing for Pavel.
All right, yeah, Hippie is just saying, all right, if you got Flame Strike, you've got Flame Strike, and you know what? Pavel's got Flame Strike. A huge clear of Hippie's entire board, and now Pavel is firmly in the driver's seat.
Yeah, you can't really blame Dr. Hippie for that one. I mean, at that point, Flame Strike is usually going to mean you lose the game anyway. So you kind of have to act like he doesn't have that, because that's the best play he can make to the board should Pavel not have the Flame Strike. Yeah. So you can't really blame him for going and extending into that spell there.
Yeah, the ability to identify when you can afford to play around something and when you have to just let your opponent beat you if they have it is a crucial thing for top-level players. And Hippie looks at the situation, evaluates, yeah, you know what, I'd probably lose to Flame Strike. If you have it, you have it. And Pavel truly gets the best of him with that. And being getting the best of him, Flame Waker getting the best of that entire board, and Hippie with no life. This game's all but over.
Yeah, I mean, when it rains, it pours as far as Hearthstone goes. Dr. Hippie's going to stay in the game just to maybe, think of what deck he's going to queue up next, but this game is over as Pavel with the fireball to the face is going to take game number 2. And this is a big one, Kibler, because this was a poor matchup for him going in.
Yeah, this was definitely not a matchup he was looking to get, but he was able to make the best of it when he did, and he's able to take the series to a tied score of 1-1 here in the finals. Look at that crowd. We have, looks like every single seat is full here in the Hearthstone Arena for the World Championship Finals. This is a lot of pressure for these players.
Oh, yeah. I said earlier, the tension is palpable. If these players look out and see all those people rooting for them or rooting against them, even it's a lot of pressure. But we're going to head into game number 3 right after this. It's standing room only here at the 2016 BlizzCon Hearthstone World Championship stage. And these players, they're looking very nervous as the crowd cheers them on. It's tied up 1-1, Kibler. It's basically down to a best of 5 for these players at 1-1.
Yeah, these players have been working all year to get here. In Pavel's case, this is the culmination of last year too. He was 1 match away from making it to BlizzCon last year. It gave him the motivation to fight to make it here again. He's made it all the way to the finals. He wants to make the best of it.
It takes a lot, and both these players sort of have that same story. It takes a lot to lose in a finals. Realize you're so far away from making it back, but having the determination and having the drive to get back. Dr. Hippie had his runner-up performance in winter, came back in the summer and won it. You mentioned Pavel had his performance last year, 1 game away from BlizzCon. He came back, won the last call.
And now going into game number 3, Druid versus Druid. It's a deck we've seen a lot of. It's a deck that every single player brought to the World Championship, but hasn't necessarily been the best performing deck.
No, especially against Pavel. Yeah. Druid against Pavel has an abysmal win rate. He 4-0'd both Omega Zero at opening week and Amnesiac here on the BlizzCon main stage. So Dr. Hippie, he's got to be pretty scared of what's in store for him with this Druid deck.
Yeah, Pavel has had an excellent track record of keeping nature down. Has not risen against him very much. But we'll see who is the master of nature here. As Dr. Hippie mulligans into what looks like a pretty bad hand.
Yeah, he does have Azure Drake, though. That's one of the good cards in the mirror. He does have removal. But Pavel has Wild Growth. He has Fangel. He has Mire Keeper. That hand is looking much better than Dr. Hippie's.
Yeah, Pavel has the ability to ramp multiple times. This is a matchup that will often come down to just getting big threats in play that stick. And it's difficult for the Druid to really remove big threats because most of the Druid removal is based on damage. We see the swipes and Moonfires, Wraths. And if you are able to stick an Arcane Giant, if you're able to stick Ragnaros the Fire Lord, it can be very, very difficult for the other player to come back.
Yeah, one thing to note about the differences between these guys' deck is Pavel, as we've seen over the course of the championship, has those Dark Arakoas at that 6th slot in his decks, where, you know, Dr. Hippie doesn't. I believe he has an extra copy of something, and he has Baron Geddon as well.
Yeah, it is worth noting many players chose to play Ancient of War. Ancient of War is generally accepted sort of the big taunt minion that you play in ramp-style Druid decks, but Pavel disagrees. He wants something that comes down a little bit faster, doesn't rely on him ramping quite as much, but still offers a big taunt body, and it's gotten him very far with that.
Yeah, he's been able to fill his curve quite nicely with those 6 drops, but now, I mean, he has Mire Keeper now to even ramp further towards whatever he may draw in the future. One thing you see, doesn't really have plays lined up for the future unless Dr. Hippie were to develop something. If he Mire Keepers this turn, then he could go with something like Fangel Wrath into a potential Mire Keeper for Dr. Hippie on the following turn.
And Pavel definitely taking his time here. We've seen Pavel play very fast in most of his games throughout this tournament, but he is taking his time. Druid is a deck that can often have a lot of options because between cards like Innervate and the modal cards like Wrath. You have a lot of different ways you can piece together your turns.
Yeah, Dr. Hippie is going to ramp, but he just doesn't have too much substance to his hand. He's got Azure Drake as his only minion. He's got plenty of removal, but that's going to force him to sort of play reactively for most of the game, unless he picks up big minions to play very quickly.
Pavel's going to go ahead and play his Azure Drake rather than play Fandral.
都冇喎。佢叮叮叮叮叮叮啊！噔噔噔噔噔噔。
Any other way to answer in Azure Drake, where he did have the way on the board to answer the Mire Keeper. So definitely planning ahead here for Pavel, it seems.
Starfire takes that, and there's a Raven Idol. So immediately for Pavel, he is rewarded for his patience with Fandral, and is able to get a double discover with his Raven Idol here.
Okay.
Just the
Why?
minion available. This is a matchup that
Why?
just who has a big thing. None of those were big, but Mount Raptor's the biggest.
Yeah, one thing that gets a little bit interesting as this game moves on is that neither of these decks packs hard removal, but they all have big threats of their own. So it comes down to sort of a war of giants later on. If you can, be the first one to play giants, if your opponent doesn't have removal for it, you get a big initiative. But at the same time, if you do have removal for your opponent's giants, that puts you at a big advantage.
And Pavel's going to go ahead and coin out that Raptor here. It does make his board a little bit awkward for Hippie to deal with. The swipe plus hero power will be able to take out the Fandral.
We knew when we started making Overwatch that the game was going to be this, action-packed 6v6 team-based shooter, and there wasn't going to be a lot of room to do tons of great storytelling, yet at the same time, we wanted to introduce the world to a whole new universe. Animated shorts were one of the most exciting avenues that we had to tell a lot of stories.